Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rucha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Jeremiah, the 17th chapter. This is Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 1. The sin of Judah is written with a pen of iron and with the point of a diamond. And this is using the analogy of, in the ancient world, there were different ways of recording information, right? You could write it, right, with ink on, some form of parchment or papers, but you could also engrave it into a table or tablet, like a clay or a stone, clay tablet. So here, the Lord is using the reference of likening the sins of Judah to this pen of iron, which is like a stylus, right, or like a chisel, right, some form of a sharp, strong pen that you can actually use to write in the clay or the clay table with the point of a diamond. It is graven upon the table. That table is like a stone or a clay tablet of their heart, meaning that their sins are etched into their minds and upon the horns of your altars, whilst their children remember their altars and their groves by the green trees, by the green trees and upon the high hills. So even the children, as the Lord was, even in the previous chapter, he mentions that your forefathers did bad, but you did worse. Even the children worship, and were offering sacrifices and basically going in the ways of these heathens, of these idols, because they taught it to their children as well. Okay, that's why it mentions remembering their altars that they set up to these false gods, and the groves where they would worship and offer offerings onto them on the high hills. Oh, my mountain in the field, this is referring to Judah, right? The Lord is likening them onto his mountain in the field. I will give thy substance and all thy treasures to the spoil. And here, meaning, when it says to the spoil, meaning he will give your substance and your treasures as a spoil to the enemy. And thy high places for sin, the places that you've set up, right, that you go and commit iniquity on, throughout all thy borders. So all of your belongings and your treasures and even the high places where you worship will be given into the hands of your adversary, in this case the Babylonians. Verse 4, and thou even thyself shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, right? Which we know ultimately in the long run, right? This took a major effect on us when we got to the falling away, where we completely lost everything, right? Not only our land, but our identity. But in the immediate future, Israel was discontinued from their physical heritage, being the land, because the bulk of them were taken out of the land that the Lord gave us. And I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in a land which thou knowest not. When you read in the book of Baruch, when you read in the book of Ezra, right, first and second Ezra complains about that, right, about being in the land of Babylon and seeing these idol worshippers and so on, and crying to the Lord about why it is that they have the upper hand over us when we are the ones that bear his name. As it says, for ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, so you've angered me, and the Lord likened it unto a fire that's been set, which shall burn forever. Now, here's actually an interesting point, right? Because the Lord's anger, when it says forever here, typically we think of the term forever as eternity, but that's not the case. Forever does not mean eternity. Okay, ever is a duration of time or an age. So when the Lord says his anger against Israel would burn forever, meaning it would burn for a period of time, a long period of time, but not for all eternity. And how do we know that? Because when you read in the promises and in the mercy that the Lord would have, he says that he would have mercy and yet choose Israel and set them in their own land, and all Israel shall be saved, right? So that anger of the Lord is not going to burn against Israel for all eternity. And when you look into the word here, ever, it's basically Iwalam. It's basically saying for a time, right? Of long duration, futurity. All right, and you have everlasting here, but we know that that's a different case, right? The Lord isn't referring to that. So, you have to use the context around the verse to help you understand of what sense is the Lord referring to, or what sense is the verse referring to. Okay. So now let's go back and continue on in verse 5. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, cursed be the man that trusteth in man. So the one man that puts their trust in man, which a lot of them were doing, a lot of man worship, which was causing them to be led astray. What's one example? This guy, Comfy, right? You had a lot of people that actually put their trust in him to believe that he was a comforter above that of what the scriptures say, which is why they were led astray. And maketh flesh his arm, meaning they when it says his arm, flesh is talking about human, right? Man. His arm meaning like they lean on or depend on or put their whole, trust and faith in another mortal man. And cursed are you, because man is not like the Lord, right? And it says here, and whose heart departeth from the Lord? Because those whose heart or minds depart from the Lord are going to go astray from the Lord. They're going to go in the way of ungodliness, and the Lord is going to bring judgment upon them. And they would endure the curse of the Lord. For he shall be like the heath in the desert. This heath goes into like a bush, right, or some planting in the desert, and shall not see when good cometh. Because if you plant something in the desert, it's not gonna survive, except if it's a specific type of plant designed for the desert. But here, the Lord is saying you're going to be like a tree planted in the desert, and shall not see when good cometh, because a tree that's planted in the desert, if it's not designed for it, will die. Its roots need a rich soil, and the soil needs water, so that the tree can gain those nutrients from the roots on up through its stem into its branches, and the fruit that it bears. So it'll basically wither away. But shall inhabit the parched places in the wilderness, in a salt land and not inhabited. So basically, you won't survive. You will be like a tree in unsurvivable conditions, because a salt land is not good at all. There's a reason why places with high salt have a low ratio of life, so to speak, because the body is designed to process only a certain amount of salt, and it's not a lot. That's also why they tell you, not to drink seawater, right? If you're out at sea, because that can actually make you, if you're stranded at sea and you end up drinking seawater, you'll die faster, right? The chances are you'll die faster than somebody that doesn't drink water at all, because your body has, I think, less than 1% of like salt tolerance, and seawater is like what, 3 point something, if I'm not mistaken. And what ends up happening is when you drink seawater, your kidneys and your body is going to try to flush out the salt, because it's such a high salt intake. But your body, in flushing out salt through urine, can only produce a certain amount of salt in your urine that's not close to the amount that you'll gain from the seawater. So as you're drinking the seawater, your body is going to start to get more thirsty, because what it's going to do is it's going to use the water that's in your cells to try and flush out all that salt and make you urinate a lot. And so you're basically going to be consuming less water than you're actually outputting out of your body. And through that dehydration, you're going to die. So you're better off not doing that. So in other words, verse 6 is the Lord, you're going to be in conditions where you're not going to really survive. Right? It's not suitable for life. Verse 7, blessed is the man, right? So this is the contrast. Blessed is the man that trusteth in the Lord Yahweh, right? That puts his trust in the Lord, who changes not, and who is faithful, unlike man, and whose hope the Lord Yahweh is. For he shall be as a tree planted by the waters, right? And a tree planted by the waters is nourished and is going to flourish and bear fruit. And that spreadeth out her roots by the river, right? By the banks of the river. So you constantly get that rich soil and that nourishment. And shall not see when heat cometh, meaning when the heat comes, you won't be bothered. Using you as a figurative tree, that is. But her leaf shall be green, and shall not be careful. So when you, for example, see the springtime, right? That's when you see the green, the trees blossoming, right? Versus fall, where they turn yellow and they start falling down. So when the leaf is green, it means the tree is healthy. It's good. It's nourished. And shall be careful or shall not be careful in the year of drought. When it says careful here, meaning more so like troubled or worried in the year of drought, because the Lord is going to ensure that you putting your trust in him, being likened onto this tree, is provided for and well nourished, and in a situation or a circumstance of life, right, to where you can survive. Neither shall cease from yielding fruit. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. The heart here meaning the mind. When you go into the word heart in the Hebrew, right, it says lab, the inner mind, right, or the inner man, the mind, the will, the heart, understanding. So as it's written here in Jeremiah 17:9, the heart, your thoughts are deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Because if it's not ruled or guided by the Spirit or by the scriptures, it will only go after the things that are pleasing to the flesh. Okay. As it says, who can know it? Because it'll deceive you into thinking that it's okay to do one thing just because the end goal of it is sweet or is beneficial to the flesh. That's why somebody can know that something is wicked, but being in the moment, they can still indulge in it. So when your heart or your mind is bounded by the Spirit, you avoid those situations. It's like being in a room with a married woman alone, and you know that she's into you, and you know she's going to try to seduce you. You don't put yourself in that situation, because even though you know it's wrong, your mind can be deceitful to where it can have you give into that situation. All of a sudden she just, doing seductive things. I'm going to keep it at that. To the point where you lose that self-control because your mind starts to, try to suppress your spiritual blockers or alerts, and tries to just hone in and zone in on the hormones being released by what you're seeing, right? And the arousal. And then before you know it, when you come back to your senses, you've done something you shouldn't do. That's why it says it's desperately wicked. It only cares about what feels good, what tastes good, what looks good, or, what makes it happy, not what is right or wrong. Verse 10, I, the Lord Yahweh, search the heart. I try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways. So the Lord doesn't judge according to just your actions, but your intentions, your inner thoughts, your reasoning. He looks at all of that. And according to the fruit of his doings. And through that, the Lord can judge you accordingly. A righteous man can do something wicked, but not with a wicked heart to a point where it's like, okay, this is a wicked individual. It's going to be a righteous man that slipped. And a wicked person can do something right, but it doesn't make them a righteous person. So the Lord, by trying the inward parts, knows how to judge you accordingly, as it says, and according to the fruit of your doings. As the partridge sitteth on eggs, and hatcheth them not, so he that getteth riches, and not by right, shall leave them in the midst of his days, and at his end shall be a fool. Now, when you read this here, this like analogy here, in the KJV, it's worded as like a partridge or like a bird that sitteth on eggs, but she's not able to hatch them. The word hatch in the Hebrew is I think is yalad, which is to bring forth or beget. So you would think of, because when birds lay eggs, they have to keep them warm, as that's the process of, like, the term hatching is to keep it in the proper conditions to where the bird that's inside the little embryo can form to an advanced stage, and then eventually can break and crack out of the shell, and that's hatching. Um, where's the mother from here? Sitteth on eggs and hatcheth, right? Yalad. And it says here of childbirth, right? To bear or bring forth, to beget. So, but when you read in some of the other translations, it's worded as like NLT, right? Like a partridge that hatches eggs, she has not laid. Okay. So some of the other translations worded as, like a bird that is hatched eggs that don't belong to it. Okay, but I'll stick to the KJV, which in both sense, in both this sense that the KJV has it and other versions, the point of the analogy is just like a bird is doing this in vain, right? Because when you look at it from the sense of a bird that hatches eggs that are not hers, eventually those eggs, the hatchlings, they recognize the voice of the original mother, and then they know that this this bird that hatched them isn't really their mother, so that work is in vain. Okay, and from the way it's worded in the KJV, partridge that sitteth on eggs, right? So it's like it lays its eggs, it sits on it, puts in the work, or acquires, let me say, the eggs, but it's not able to hatch them, right? So it's in vain, right? Anyway, so the analogy is that just like that is how somebody that gets riches, that not by the right way, so they get it by unjust means, you're like a bird that has its eggs but can't hatch it. And the reason is because, as it says, this rich person shall leave them in the midst of his days. So you're going to get the riches, but you won't get to really enjoy them, because you didn't get it by right means. So getting it was in vain anyway. And at his end shall be a fool, right? So you're going to have the death of a fool. And one example that comes to mind is the parable in the New Testament. I think it was the Lord that gave the parable about the rich man who was gathering into his barn. And the Lord said, "Thou fool, because you don't even know that this night I'm going to require your life. So all that riches you gathered is for naught. You can't even enjoy it." Verse 12, a glorious high throne from the beginning is the place of our sanctuary. And looking at this in the NLT, it says here, but we worship at your throne, eternal, high, and glorious. O Lord Yahweh, the hope of Israel, all that forsake thee shall be ashamed, and they that depart from me shall be written in the earth. And what the Lord means by that is that they're going to be buried. They're going to die if you depart from the Lord. Like the other verse that says, all they that hate the Lord love death. Because the Lord is a God of life. And if you depart from him, then you're not going to have that protection or that providence of life. And this is, as it says, because they have forsaken the Lord Yahweh, the fountain of living waters. If you let's say that there's only one place on earth where their food can be found, and you decide you're going to leave that place and go somewhere else and do your own thing, what do you think is going to happen to you? Because as a human, you need food to survive. And if there's only one source of that and you leave the source, what's going to happen to you? You're going to die. So in essence, if the Lord is the fountain of living waters and you forsake him and depart from him, what's going to happen to you? You're not going to survive. Heal me, O Yahweh, and I shall be healed. Save me, and I shall be saved, for thou art my praise. So you are the one that I praise, right? I don't go after these other idols as the rest of my people do. Behold, they say unto me, where is the word of the Lord Yahweh? Let it come now, right? So Jeremiah was saying, like, they were scoffing at him as he's prophesying, saying, yeah. Where's all that stuff you saying is going to happen? Where's it at? I don't see it. Oh, Jeremiah. Where are the Babylonians? So they're basically scoffing at him. But he says, as for me, I have not hastened from being a pastor to follow thee, right? So from the position you set me up as a pastor over these people, I haven't, departed from that, right? I haven't been in haste to leave this position or to get this over with, right? Neither have I desired the woeful day, right? Neither have I been like them, right? Basically saying, oh, well, when is it going to happen? Let it happen today. because Jeremiah understood the weight or the magnitude of that wrath that was coming. Thou knowest that which came out of my lips was right before thee. See? So the Lord, Jeremiah is like, you know, almost like what King David said, right? Like you see my heart. Verse 17, be not a terror unto me, thou art my hope in the day of evil. So Lord, I put my you're the only one I can come to. I put my faith and my trust and everything in you. Verse 18, let them be confounded that persecute me, but let not me be confounded. So confound my enemies, confound those that come against me, but don't confound me. Let them be dismayed, but let not me be dismayed. Bring destruction upon them, bring upon them the day of evil, and destroy them with double destruction. So, so Jeremiah, you know, he was pretty much, you know, he had it. He was like, Lord, I understand now, you know, why you must bring this judgment. Please bring it and double it upon them, because these people are just through. Verse 19, thus saith the Lord Yahweh unto me, go and stand in the gate of the children of the people, right? So in the entrance, in the city gates, whereby the kings of Judah come in, and by the which they go out, and in all the gates of Jerusalem. So go to the public areas, the gates, the entrances, where people come in and out, and say unto them, hear ye the word of the Lord Yahweh, ye kings of Judah, and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem that enter in by these gates. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, take heed to yourselves, and bear no burden on the Sabbath day, nor bring it in by the gates of Jerusalem. So, you know, watch how you know, watch yourselves and keep in mind on the Sabbath day. Now, bearing the burden on the Sabbath day was indicative of working, because typically what would happen is, like, even during the time of Nehemiah, there would be people who would come into the city with their stuff that they're going to sell, and they would bear it. They would carry it either on a donkey or on themselves. So the burden they were bearing is the things that they would sell. And by them bringing that in on the Sabbath day, meaning they were here to conduct, you know, labor, right, to work, but also to buy and sell, which was indicative of working. Because when somebody is buying something, that means somebody is selling something. And in the ancient world, if somebody was selling something, it was usually that thing was usually done through labor, whether it's like meal or corn or flour or some produce or whatnot. It would be, they would have to wake up early, they would have to prepare it, and then they would take it to the marketplace, right, or into the city to sell it, right? So Jeremiah is saying here, the Lord says, don't bring these things in, don't open up shop on the Sabbath. Verse 22, and you would also have, you know, merchants that would come into the city, right, to buy and sell and to you know, deal commerce with the people. Neither carry forth a burden out of your houses on the Sabbath day, neither do ye any work, because that would be basically them getting ready to go and, you know, conduct labor. But hallow ye the Sabbath day as I commanded your fathers. So keep it holy. It's a day of rest, honor it. But they obeyed not, neither inclined their ear, but made their neck stiff, that they might not hear nor receive instruction. So they just completely ignored Jeremiah. They didn't take heed to what he was saying. They said, hey, what was he saying? Hey, ignore him. Let's go. We got things to sell. You know, we got work to do. So they acted like they just didn't, like he wasn't even there. Verse 24, and it shall come to pass, if ye diligently hearken unto me, saith the Lord. So them ignoring Jeremiah is really them ignoring the Lord. And he's saying, if you diligently hearken to me, you listen to me, to bring in no burden through the gates of the city on the Sabbath day, but hallow the Sabbath day to do no work therein, then shall there enter into the gates of this city kings and princes sitting on the throne of David, meaning I'm going to establish and maintain your throne, right? Your rulers riding in chariots and on horses, they and their princes, the men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and this city shall remain forever. So if you take heed and obey and listen to my instructions, I'm going to maintain you, keep you in the land, you know, have you continue to live day by day by day. Right, and they shall come forth from the cities of Judah and from the places about Jerusalem, and from the land of Benjamin, and from the plain, and from the mountains, and from the south, bringing burnt offerings and sacrifices and meat offerings and incense, and bringing sacrifices of praise unto the house of the Lord. Now, these are basically things that are done, on a normal sense, right? There's no droughts, there's no famines, there's no enemies trying to come and, bring war against you. This is just your normal life, right? Everything is good. You have good harvest that you can use for the burnt offerings. People are basically living good. Okay, that's what it's signifying here, as the Lord is saying, right? I'm going to preserve you and allow you to continue to, to live and be good. But that's if you follow me. But if you will not hearken unto me to hallow the Sabbath day, and not to bear a burden, even entering in at the gates of Jerusalem on the Sabbath day, then will I kindle a fire in the gates thereof, and it shall devour the palaces of Jerusalem, and it shall not be quenched. And looks like the latter half is what ended up happening, because they didn't want to listen to the Lord. So when the Babylonians came in, along with the Edomites, because when you read in I think it's First Ezra, the 4th chapter, it tells you that they burned the temple, right? They also partook in that. But the Lord did have that, right? He had them set the place on fire, right? The palaces and buildings, the temple, right? All of that was destroyed, the walls included. And that brings us to the end of the book of Jeremiah, the 17th chapter. Lord willing, this is edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rechak, Wadash. And until next time, Shalom.